Hi again, everybody. Steve Scott here for another edition of our Kaizen online coaching program. Today's subject is grip fighting and gripping. Okay, so we're going to discuss why it's so important. Everybody says the grip is so important. Well, if you've been around a while, you know how important it is to control your opponent with the grip. So we will talk about this. Today, the emphasis will be on jacket or belt wrestling or grappling, such as judo, jiu-jitsu, sambo, that type of stuff. But also what I'm talking about will have great relevance with the no gi grappling, such as MMA or submission grappling, that type of thing as well. So stay tuned for all of that, and we're going to be talking about this. But remember, the purpose of gripping is to dominate and control your opponent. Okay, so we're gonna get into that a bit later, and I have some very specific ideas that have worked for my athletes for many years, and I've seen it work for other good athletes too. So we'll talk about kind of not rules, but real strong rules, gripping guidelines, that type of thing in actual competition. So we'll talk about that. But let's talk a little bit about the first here about the history of gripping. And there is a history to gripping. Yeah, I mean, well, yeah, we've been doing it for years. We reach out and grab somebody and we try to throw them or whatever it may be. But it was Jigoro Kano, Professor Jigoro Kano, who did so much in the world of martial arts and certainly in the development of Kodokan Judo. He was the founder of Kodokan Judo and the father of physical education in Japan and a leading figure in sports internationally. But Kano was really the guy who not only invented the judo uniform we wear, the Judo Gi or Jiu-Jitsu Gi and many adaptations of it, he actually designed that. And he also developed the concept of gripping, okay? And what is now what we call, he named kumikata, what we call the natural grip or the normal grip, okay? All right. And it means, kumi means to engage, like in wrestling, okay? To connect with another person, kumi. And kata is the form of doing it, okay? The method of doing it. So it's the method of engaging with another person. That's what kumi kata means. We call it the normal grip or natural grip or regular lapel and sleeve grip. The reason Kano invented that, because when he studied Kito-Ryu Jiu-Jitsu, and that was very instrumental in him in his development, I think probably just a supposition on my part from reading the history and reading what he said, Kito-Ryu really influenced him a lot, okay? And certainly as it translates to what we do in what we consider modern judo or jiu-jitsu or sambo, any of the grappling sports of today. So Kito-Ryu, the style that he studied, one of the three primary styles he studied, was influential. So historically, I'm a history buff, maybe you are too. I think it's interesting. But Kito Jiu-Jitsu, they emphasized throwing a lot, and it was from a lot of things that they did in throwing that kind of developed a lot of the things we see in judo. So gripping was one of them, and there was no standard way for the students to actually physically get hold of each other to practice their techniques. So when he developed the Kodokan in 1882, when the early years of it, in those early years in the early 1880s into the 1890s, he developed what became known as kumikata, the standard grip, where if you're a right-handed player, judo person, your right hand's on the lapel, left hand's on the sleeve. He developed that concept. Before him, no one grabbed any shape or form that was some regularity. And what he did, he wrote about this. He said, "I'm providing a basis that everybody can start from the same point." So this kumikata, it was a brilliant idea. It's something we take for granted, but there are a lot of things in life we take for granted that are really brilliant ideas. They're simple but not simple-minded. And kumikata was one of those very simple yet brilliant things that Kano developed. Now he also developed the judo uniform or the Judo Gi. By the way, geeks like me find it, if you say gi, and I do too, I'm as guilty as anybody, gi or no gi, really you should have something before, like Judo Gi or Do-Gi, practice gi, okay? And so a Judo Gi, Jiu-Jitsu Gi, whatever you wish, Aikido Gi, whatever, but don't just use the word gi, okay? That's beside the point, but there you go, a little bit of trivia there might be of interest to you. But the Judo Gi, developed it, and it was based on the rudimentary, the early forms of jiu-jitsu uniforms that had been worn, and he put it together. He lengthened the sleeves, he reinforced the collar, the lapels, he lengthened the apron underneath the belt. He standardized how the belt was to be wrapped around the body so it would stay wrapping around it so many times, twice around, and the tie in the square knot. He lengthened the pant length of the legs, the pants. So all for safety, and also so he could, have more of a realistic way of grabbing someone and practicing. So the Judo Gi was really an invention of Kano to make the practice of judo more scientific, more functional, and it certainly has worked. So that's the little history of there. So the gripping we do is all based on that. Okay, but you can also sell the T-shirt I'm in. Anything else, you can grip these just as well as a Judo Gi if you know how to grip the gi well. So there we go. A little bit about the history of gripping. Okay, kumikata. I'm going to be discussing today both the judo theory and the Sambo theory of gripping, because if you know me and you've seen my stuff before, I'm a big advocate of Sambo as well, and we know that Sambo is a derivative of the initial derivative of Kodokan Judo, but it became a thing of its own, just like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu did and other grappling sports as well. But Sambo, the Soviets developed this little different take on gripping. And if you've been around as long as I have, or if you watch some of the old videos, you will see back from the 1960s into the 70s how when the Soviet grapplers, Sambo grapplers who were wearing judo uniforms, entered judo competitions on the international level, certainly provided some very, shall we say, unorthodox at the time gripping methods, which worked tremendously well for them. And the world has not been the same since. And I think all for the better in terms of the richness and fullness of the science and art of gripping and controlling another human being and throwing him, and also in the ground fighting as well. But in any event, so we'll be covering both judo theory and Sambo theory and technical practice of gripping. So let's, without further ado, me yapping on, let's continue. I might add also, as a supplement, 2 books, if you would look at them, if you've got them already. My book, Sambo Encyclopedia. I cover gripping extensively in that book. Okay, Sambo Encyclopedia, which I will have here in front of me momentarily. And also my book on judo, Winning on the Mat, which I cover gripping in there extensively as well. So, because it is so important. So both Sambo and judo, they are jacket grappling sports or activities. That's important they be in both books, so they are. Okay. So anyway, let's talk about first the Japanese or the judo theory of gripping, okay, kumikata, okay, and gripping in general. The Japanese they do a lot of pulling, right? If you've done judo, you've done a lot of uchikomis, you do a lot of pulling methods, okay. So if I'm a righty, okay, my right hand on the lapel, left hand on the sleeve, my left hand on the sleeve that's pulling is called the hikite, the pulling hand, okay, all right. If you've been around, you're a geek on this stuff like I am, you'll know that. All right. If you don't know that, it's hiki means to pull, te means hand. Hiki te, pull hand, pulling hand. The other hand, the right hand, okay, the one holding the lapel or around the back or whatever it may be, using your right hand is the surite, okay, and that's the lifting hand. All right. Suri means to lift or to hang on to. So you're literally hanging on to them. That's suri, okay. That's what it means, by the way. It doesn't mean just to lift. It means to hang on and control by lifting. Te means hand. So suri te is the hanging hand or lifting hand, okay? And so from a judo theory in gripping, you have these 2 methods, and they work independently of each other, but also in accord with each other. Same in Sambo, okay? But what the judo people kind of take for granted is something of the Sambo people, and I've certainly looked into this myself in my own research in this, is that there are other methods of using both the surite and the hikite, okay? Now, Jeff Gleason came along in the 1960s and did a great thing. He gave kind of an English translation to the hikite and surite. The hikite is the pulling hand, okay? Is the kind of controlling hand that we would pull and lead, the leading hand, as it were. Okay. The right hand, if I'm a right grip guy, he called the power hand. All right. Years later, I heard from Neil Adams. He called it the steering hand. So if I'm a right-handed judo person, judoka, and I'm pulling with my left hand, and with my right hand, say I'm setting him up for a tai otoshi. Okay, I'm pulling with the left hand. My right hand sets it at the lapel or around the back, wherever it is, and I'm steering with the right hand. As you can see, my right hand there. It's the steering hand. The left hand is the pulling hand. Now, I call it the power hand, just like Gleason did, based on his writings. But I think Neil Adams was on the right track there by calling it the steering hand, because in fact you are steering him with your hand. You don't have to be at the lapel either, like in a normal kumikata lapel grip. You can be around the back. You can be holding the belt. You can be any type of a dominant position, but you are adding power to it, like Gleason said, but you're also adding the element of steering him with it, okay? I always looked at using in my hands. I'd like to get one hand on him as kind of a sense of radar, okay? My feel of his touch on his body or where he moves, I can sense how he goes. It's what the Japanese called feeling your judo. Okay, that kinesthetic awareness, that touch, that feel, and that's what gripping can do if you're sensitive enough to it. You've done it enough. Okay, so you can kind of use your hands as radar as well. In that sense, now we're getting in now into a little more into the Sambo theory of gripping, in that there is an anchor hand, what I used to always call just my radar hand. Okay, and I think it's you can describe it as that. But let's say again, I'm a right-sided Sambo grappler now. Okay, now when I approach my opponent, instead of getting a standard lapel and sleeve grip, now I may want to do that, but I'm a right-sided. I attack throw primarily the right-sided, so everything from here on considered right-sided. My left hand will reach out and catch him, often at the lapel or the epaulet, but certainly on the lapel here at his shoulder. Can you see how I'm grabbing my shoulder? And I steer him with my shoulder in that sense, but that's my anchor. I've grabbed him, I've set an anchor. Okay, bam, it's set. The anchor is set. I also use that left hand to feel where he moves. Okay, so if he moves one way, I can sense it. The other way, I can sense it. If you just think back what you do when you're gripping. That's what you sense that, don't you? Okay, so I'm just explaining it what it is. It's not me. I didn't invent this. I'm just explaining it to you. But if you understand that, that's your anchor hand that kind of senses where he goes. But you can also steer him now. My right hand isn't just my steering hand anymore. I can steer with my anchor hand as well. I can set that anchor and move him, or at least guide where we go in our bodies. Set the proximity between my opponent and me, the space, between our bodies. But I can do that. Now, if my other hand is, I might have it open, so my left hand is gripping, set the anchor. My right hand is what is called the probing hand, the hunting hand, the fishing hand. I'm reaching out and I'm seeing where I may have to move. If he moves to the left, boom, I can get my grip that I want. Okay, I would highly suggest you look on my YouTube channel where I explain this. I think I've got a video. It's about a 13 or 14, maybe shorter minute video on gripping. Okay, grip fighting. You'll see it on my YouTube channel. There's a picture of my wife fighting at the British Open. An old photo of her, and so it says grip fighting on there. So look for that. That's the thumbnail. It's on there. So look for that grip fighting video. I explain a lot of this. You can actually see me physically do this with Derek Darling in the dojo. So we can, you can physically see this. But my left hand is my anchor, set it. My right hand is my probing hand, the one I'm probing, reaching for, controlling, trying to hunt with him, trying to get the move that I want to latch on and control him, to eventually steer him and control him. Think also, in a Sambo theory, is when I grab onto my opponent, I'm literally looping if I take off my belt or wear a belt, looping my belt or a rope or something where I'm trapping him. So my left hand is here, my right hand is here, and it's like I'm controlling him one side, the other side, okay? And we're getting into now what I've often heard called a short grip or a compact grip or a near grip and a long grip, okay? And let me just read out of my Sambo encyclopedia what I have to say. I try not to read too much on the video here. You can read for yourself, but I think what I wrote in Sambo encyclopedia is a little more clear than my water here, but then what I would probably explain. So I think it's a little more appropriate that I read it. So let's talk about long grips and short grips. So a short grip, I'll try to read slowly and enunciate my words. A useful way to explain gripping an opponent in Sambo is to understand what is a compact or a short grip and what is an extended or a long grip. A short or compact grip is one where an athlete's primary control point is his opponent's shoulders. Okay, we want to control his shoulders. Now remember, your opponent, my body, our shoulders are connected in a straight line to our hips. If we control his shoulders well, we will control his hips well. We want to control his hips. They're the center of a universe for a grappler, okay? Hip control. Whether it's in ground fighting or standing, I want that proximity of my body to his body based on the distance of our hips. And if I can control his shoulders and I'm grabbing really closely on that jacket, that lapel, that is what is a short grip. Okay, so we're pretty close to each other, really, aren't we? So that's why it's called a short grip. My body and his body are reasonably close together. So a short or compact grip is one where an athlete's primary control point is his opponent's shoulders. Now, an extended or long grip is where an athlete's primary control point is his opponent's arms. So down the length of the arm length, okay, a low sleeve grip, or even at the elbow. So when you grab someone with your left hand on his right elbow or his low sleeve, you're obviously a lot further away from him than if you were to grab him at his shoulder. So that's what a short grip is, grabbing at the shoulder. A long grip is grabbing more at the sleeve. So they say, well, why don't you just call it a lapel grip or a sleeve grip? Well, if you just call it that, you don't understand the concept of how spatial awareness, proximity, how close your body to your opponent's body must be to really make a throw happen. Okay, to get in quickly and turn your hips, you've got to be able to be close enough or to attack or defend easily, or far enough depends on your style of Sambo or Judo. So understand the difference between a short grip and a long grip. So let's get back into this. In many cases, but not all cases, a compact or short grip leads to less distance between the two athletes, almost always it does, and may produce a slower tempo. Again, not always, but it does, when the athletes move about the mat. Now, the tempo, how fast you and your opponent move about the mat. That's the tempo, the pace of the match. Okay. A long grip tends to lead to more space between the opponents and make for a faster tempo or pace of the match when the athletes move about the mat. Okay, so there's more distance. Okay. Remember, how you grab or grip your opponent directly determines how closely your body is in relation to his body or her body, and more specifically to his hips, which control the center part of his body. If the attacker can control his opponent's shoulders, he can better control his opponent's hips. Controlling an opponent's hips often leads to controlling the movement of the opponent's body. A short grip is a grip where the attacker uses his hands and arms to grip and control an opponent's shoulders. I've said that before. I wanted to repeat it again. It's worth repeating. This results in the bodies of the attacker and defender being in close proximity to each other. Again, worth repeating. And a long grip is where the attacker primarily controls the defender's arms, creating space between them. Again, worth repeating. This results in the bodies of the attacker and defender being further apart from each other. Okay, so how do we use that in action? Generally, when you see like the Sambo guys fight, they're pretty close. They grip a hold of closer at the shoulders, and they have a closer space between their bodies and their opponent's body. I prefer that style. I like that. It's always worked for me. It seemed to work for my athletes. Not all of them, but for many of them. And whether it's in judo sense, Sambo, jiu-jitsu, whatever it may be, you can control the space. Really, you dominate them a lot better. Okay, I like the shorter grip. But I often say when you're in the lead and you're winning the match, you only have short time left in the match, Am I going to get real close to him so I give him an opportunity to attack? No, I'm going to lengthen my grip, get a long grip. I'm going to create space between my opponent and me, and I'm going to look as busy as I can, but I'm still going to keep the lead, right? I'm going to create that space. He's going to have to work. He's going to have to get close that space between him and me to catch me, to try to throw me or take me down. So grips tactically are very important. And I just talked about a way of keeping the grip using keeping the lead using the grip. Okay, so we'll talk about that as quickly as I can about the rules of gripping. So anyway, I think it's important to know the difference between a long grip and a short grip. And I hope I haven't muddied the waters for a lot of you judo people, but that's really I've tried to give a good explanation of what it is. I lost my place here. Okay, let's look at why we grip, and then we're going to talk about some basic rules for gripping and fighting. Okay. You have to decide what you want to accomplish with your grip. Okay, you can't. I'm not saying that one grip doesn't work for every technique. Some people have made careers out of the lapel and sleeve kumikata grip. Okay, don't get me wrong, but generally, and for the most part, you have to tailor the grip to the type of attack you want to do, to the type of throw you want to do, or takedown, or transition you want to do. And you will change that subtly or not so subtly. And hopefully, if you're good enough, your opponent will know what the heck you're doing. So decide what you want to accomplish with your grip. What's the purpose of grabbing your opponent in the way you are grabbing him? Using the grip effectively is fundamentally important, both technically and tactically, in a Sambo or judo match or jiu-jitsu, whatever it may be. The bottom line is this: why are you gripping your opponent the way you are gripping him? What is its purpose? What is the purpose of that grip? I need to match that grip the most efficient way to get me into a throw, okay, so I can throw my opponent, all right? Here are some goals to consider when grip fighting. Here's 10 goals. Control of the opponent's movement. Here's why we're gripping, okay? Control the opponent's movement. Shut him down, limit his posture, limit his movement. Okay, you want to control him, number one. Number two, use the grip to help control the space between you and your opponent. That kind of ties into number one, doesn't it? But you got to control the space between you and him. Again, long grips, short grips, okay? All right. Control, or what I call kill, quote unquote, your opponent's forward or lead shoulder. So if he's a righty, it's probably his right shoulder. You want to break that shoulder down and control it. You want to dominate it. And by doing this, to limit the use of his hands, and you control his posture, and you control his movement when you kill his shoulder, his dominant shoulder. So if I want to set up for a throw and set you up my right hand, my steering hand, okay, probe with it, if my opponent grabs me at the shoulder and moves it down, kills it, or stops it by an inside grip and keeps me from moving it, then he's killed my grip. He's killed my shoulder, which controls my movement. It's hard for me to mount an attack if I can't get in, or if my shoulder's been broken down. So does that make sense? That's number 3. Number 4, use grip fighting to control the tempo or pace, or how fast you and your opponent move about the mat in the match. Okay? So by gripping, you can control. Gripping and tempo go hand in hand. So it's part and parcel the same thing, how fast you move about the mat. Okay? Often a longer grip. You see the judo players, the judo athletes, Sambo athletes, grapplers, they'll move faster about the mat in a longer grip when they're holding at the end of the sleeves, where there's a lot of distance between the two opponents. That results from the initial grip. Okay. All right. Use your grip to set up your favorite throwing attack, or transition, or takedown. Okay. So the grip, marry the grip, develop the grip to work best for the move you want to work. Okay. All right. You know what to do. You've worked on this in the dojo, on the mat, in the gym. You work on this. Okay. So the grip should match the throwing attack. All right. Engage your opponent in grip fighting to kill time or kill the clock if you're ahead. Okay. In the score. Also, when you're behind the score, you've got to grip them quick, and you got to know what you're going to do. You've got to have some things if you're winning and if you're losing. All right. So that's tactical. So from a tactical standpoint, gripping is essential. All right. So if I'm winning the match, I know what I need to do to keep the lead. And often, again, the first line of where we touch somebody or he touches me is how we grab a hold of each other, the grip. All right. So I need to understand that if I've got 40 seconds left in the match and I'm ahead by, 5 points or a Yuko or whatever it may be, all right, I want to make sure that there's enough space between him and my opponent and me that I look real efficient. And I gotta fool the referee too, besides my opponent. I gotta convince the referee I'm gonna be real busy, so I'm gonna take a really long grip. I'm gonna stay real active, and I'm not gonna let him anywhere near me. Okay, if you say that, well, that's sissy. Why I got to throw him for the pawn to win. Okay, fine for you. But if it's a tight match and you want to win, you want to win. Okay, so that's part of the tactics of gripping, and you can't always win by a pawn, can you? Sometimes it's a tight fight, like I call it, and you've got to win any way you can that's legal. This is a good way to do it. Sorry for the water break. All right, number 8 rule out of 10. Use the grip to neutralize your opponent's steering hand or anchor hand, as well as his probing hand. So if I'm fighting an opponent and he's a righty as well as I am, and he wants to come over the top and stop me, I got to block that right hand. He's out there keeping it. Boom, I got to stop. I got to shut it down. So I got to stop his steering hand, his power hand, his probing or hunting hand. I've got to stop that as well. So I'm going to neutralize and kill his near shoulder and stop his dominant right hand. Okay, so gripping is important. You see this again. You just go out and throw somebody. You just don't go out and throw somebody. You got to figure out how to throw somebody on a regular basis, and gripping is the sure way to do it. Number 9, it's a simple fact that some grips work better with some throws than others. I've talked about this a few seconds ago. All right, take the time and effort in training to best match the grip to the throw or takedown or transition, I might add, that works best for you. Okay, so I'm a big, tall guy. I'm almost 6'4". All right, am I going to use a standard kumikata with my right hand on the lapel? I may. Okay, but most likely in my career, and I teach this to my other tall students, athletes, we would dominate with our right hand and control with our steering hand, our power hand, or our probing hand. We would take around the edge and get around to control his deltoid or shoulder. A back grip, or a Georgian grip, in Sambo. So I would dominate a different way. So I have to, because I like the crossbody Osoto. I like the setups for rear throws, like the switch or something. So it worked for me. And so make it work for you. That's all I'm saying. You don't have to use that grip, but it's just an example. Okay. Number 10. I got this from my old coach, Renee Palmerell. I think it's some of the best advice I've ever heard from any coach, anytime, anywhere. Everything is a handle. And what we do, everything is a handle. Okay. Whether you're wearing a jacket, belts, pants, gi, no gi, whatever you have on, any part of his body, any part of his jacket or clothing is a handle for you to grab, and it's also a handle for him to grab. But then, in any event, everything is a handle. The art and science of grip fighting, starts with the realization that you have to get hold of your opponent and control him in order to throw him, neutralize him, to transition to a mat move or whatever, or to take him down. Use anything and everything at your disposal to grip and control your opponent. By the way, this applies to ground fighting as well. Okay, so everything I said about gripping applies to newaza or ground fighting as well, whether standing or on the ground. Okay. By the way, I start my gripping thing in the Sambo book on page 37. I'm to page 39 now, if you're following me. And a technical tip I like to give: any grip that works for you and works for you when you need it to work for you is a good grip. Experiment with using different grips for different throws or transitions or takedowns in practice, and always be on the lookout for effective functional gripping methods. Okay, don't get locked into I only grip this way. Don't get locked into that, because again, we're looking for functional skill. I want effectiveness. This is real world fighting. Okay, I want to grab him the most efficient way possible to make my throw, transition, or takedown work. Okay. I'll tell you what, we're at the close to the 30-minute mark here on this video, and I haven't even got to the judo aspect of it on winning on the mat. But I'm going to go ahead and cut another. I'm going to end this video real quick here, and I'm going to cut a second video on. I have 22 different kind of rules or guidelines for grip fighting in an actual match that piggyback off the 10 I just talked about. Okay, so we just got the real fundamentals down pat here in this video. Let's take it into the next step on some applying those in an actual match. I might also add, check out my YouTube page, the YouTube channel, because I do have some videos there on gripping, and the one we just put on here about grip fighting. I have some actually on the mat stuff. It's only about, I don't know how long it is, not that long, but anyway. And I'll also add, I want to say this before I do bug out here to get to the next video. The best way to train for gripping, one of the biggest mistakes we make when we're talking about grip fighting and gripping, is we think we have to have some really cool, super, cool setup for this or that. Look, make it work for you, okay? That's the point here. And the best way to learn if it works for you is what I call grip randori. I've heard it called grip fencing, okay? Grip fighting drills, okay? And that's what it is the best way isn't to practice this real slow, let me do this and this, and 18 moves to get to this really cool sumigeishi or seoinagi or something else. No, the best way is I figure out the grip that best works for my throw, transition or takedown, all right? And let's see how that sets up in grip randori. Now, grip randori is this. It's randori without the throws, pins, takedowns, arm locks, chokes, leg locks, whatever. I want to beat my opponent at the grip, okay? And I kind of look at it this way, like say we're going 1 minute rounds, I want to be very aggressive. Grip randori teaches you to be very aggressive. If you watch the YouTube channel, I have a good example of grip randori drilling, okay? And so grip fighting drills. So look at that. But my goal here is to get a better grip on my opponent, the grip I want. And I want to keep him from getting the grip he wants. So, we may have an exchange there. Boom, boom, may take, 7, 8, 10, 15 seconds or maybe longer to initiate the grip, maybe not longer. But, within that minute or so of the grip fighting drill, maybe that first round I beat him. I dominated the grip. I just shut him down. I got him. Like, okay, good. We start again. Or he may fight out of it. I let him fight out of it, and to see what he can do. So the best way to develop effective grip fighting skills is to grip randori. Again, under training situations, it has to be controlled, but it has to be very aggressive grip fighting randori. Okay, so get at it when you grip fight. Don't just make it passive or this happens there. Make it work. So there you go, a little bit of tip, and I will get on the next video. Thanks a lot.